Okay, I think I'm running. Let's get our little advert on the road here. Welcome to Evolution Hour on today, the 24th of March in the wee hours of the morning, 2025, in our year of impending doom in Trump 2.0. Ain't it exciting? And remember, tortuganwordpress.com. Lots of sources there, plenty of material. Admittedly, some of it is now some years old, but nonetheless, perfectly feasible for everybody to share and share alike all the content available there. And the links are always, along with our books and the Patreon thing, are all available every week in the links, which I stick in once the thing is finalized. So, as you all know, ongoing process, week by week by week, Titans of the Earth, Sea, and Air, the Creationist book by dear old Jonathan Sarfati and Joel Tay. And it's nicely illustrated, etc., etc. But as you know, it's not exactly a live wire on the technical front. And as I noted last week, they had already shot over the mark of having more, 37% of their sources so far are Young Earth Creationist, largely CMI material, and some of it recycled versions of Sarfati and Tay. So that they now have cited more technical or creationist literature than they have technical citations. And whether or not that's going to continue, I think it's very probable it's going to continue because this chapter is not exactly a glut of technical material. We will be having some more technical citations available, but it won't be directly via the material from Sarfati and Tay this week. So, they're going on about one of the I thought was kind of interesting for a creationist paper that they cite is one by Warren Shipton, Thoughts on the Nutritional Challenges Facing Felines. And I will be eventually going through and listing all of the various sources in my reference field, because part of the work that I do here in the TIP project is cataloging what gets cited by anti-evolutionists and what doesn't, to get a measurement of how far they are bumping into the technical field. So every single one of these references that are in the Shipton paper, I will be going through bit by bit by bit by bit by bit to fold them into the project. But it's a little sidebar issue, so it's going to be gone into it at quite a bit later length. But for this week's episode, I thought it was kind of relevant to look into a particular quote on the role of recombination events has not yet been investigated, but has been suggested as a potential significance. And he cited 3 technical papers as a support for this. As it turns out, every single one of them is an open access paper. So we're going to look in and find out whether or not they are supporting the general contention as to where recombination comes up. Does this have something to do with the origin of felids or particular cats? Because he's really talking about almost domestic cats as the primary source of the paper. And the idea, the basic argument that Shipton is putting forward is that it's genetic mutations resulting from the fall that are among the reasons why some creatures switch from a plant-based to a meat-based diet. This, of course, is a necessity on their part to fit all that into their mythology, that herbivory was the natural condition for critters until the nasty fall caused that to happen. Creationists overall have kind of pulled back from the old 1970s version where they were insisting that carnivory only came in after the flood, although there are still some creationists that hold on to that, particularly ones that are drawing on older material. But anyway, this is part of this paper here from 2017 is clearly reflecting the mutation of the phenomenon. Anyway, what do they got? To show you how deep, just by a coincidence, I had seen a discussion between Dapper Dino and Kip Davis, who are going through Bodie Hodge's 2013 book on the Tower of Babel, and that fall of critters argument pops up ubiquitously in that worldview as well. So I'm going to be putting a link into Dapper Dino and Davis's thing, and it's a fun one. If you're not subscribed to that, pay attention to that one, because they've been going through in great detail all of the terrible linguistic problems and the just mess There's apparently also been quite a lot of shakeups in AIG land, as the guy that was going to take over Ken Ham's slot has apparently gone back and gone out. Bodie Hodge seems to be kind of going off in his own way. So whether or not the whole organization is going through a sea change in the same way that it did back in 2005, 2006, when CMI split off from AIG, interesting. We're going to see one way or the other. I wish them all the luck that they would have it if they go on to a bog quicksand. So anyway, where is in their crowd? One is a 2009 paper from Driscoll, which is on from wild animals to domestic pets, an evolutionary view of domestication, which is again a nice little piece, PNAS, and the recombination issue came up kind of once in where it was alluding to the fact that their particular analytical model of how herbivory and carnivory fits into things and the domestication of animals happens to be, this model avoids the selection recombination antagonism described in 49, whereby genes required for assortative mating must be linked because the same genes that drive habitat choice also drive assortative mating. So in other words, the recombination issue isn't really the main topic or one that is relevant because it doesn't involve it. So it's irrelevant. By the way, their paper also talks about the modern domestic cat as the product of 11 million years of natural selection in a world free of people and 12,000 years of natural selection in a world increasingly dominated by humanity exceeds the load limit of young earth creationism as a model. Needless to say, bringing that stuff up as though the technical work didn't support all of that solid science information is a justification for Shipton kind of misrepresenting the material. Now, because Shipton is the source that Sarfati and Tay are dealing with, not any of this technical literature, they're kind of one step removed from the evasions. Anyway, the next paper is specifically on tiger and snow leopard genomes from 2013, Yun-Sung Cho. And that also is open access, so I'll be able to put a link up to that. Recombination comes up once in the paper, and I put a little highlight around there, blippity bloop, that where they're saying the divergence in genomic structure among closely related species is considered as a major factor underlying species diversification, as gene flow requires recombination in collinear chromosomes, and the reduction in recombination associated with chromosomal rearrangements results in a reproductive barrier, and they cite a paper for note 29. These structural variations may be one of the more important factors underlying species diversification among the felines. So that's kind of getting closer to the point that Shipton was citing the paper for. Fine and dandy. Then the third paper, et al. 2014, comparative analysis of the domestic reveals genetic signatures underlying feline biology and domestication. The recombination issue came up several times on one of the pages, which is 33, where they are discussing issues including homologous recombination, and the previous studies have suggested that domestic may select for an increase in recombination as a mechanism to generate diversity, and they cite a paper specifically selection for recombination driver allele may be favored when it is tightly linked to one, two, or more genes with allele under selection, and cited some more material. And I would have gone to the rigmarole of citing the various sub papers, but you can locate that because the paper will be open access. You can follow that because that's not the point that we're dealing with here. Again, we're talking about a chronology that doesn't fit the model, but at least we've got a paper that is alluding to the issue of homologous recombination and noting that at the time, 2014, that this was an issue that was an open matter. Fine and dandy. But remember, Shipton, and this is 2014. Now, it happens that several of the people who are on the Montague paper, Gang Lee and William J. Murphy, by no coincidence whatsoever, continue to do work in the field. So there's a 2016 paper, and hence prior to the Shipton piece, and then later on a 2019 paper, which is after that. The 2019 paper, I'll be putting links up to both of them. But the 2019 paper, Recombination-Aware Phylogenomics, reveals the structured genomic landscape of hybridizing cat species. And it is a delightful little paper where they are breaking things down, both in the 2016 and the 2019 paper, in really great detail as to the recombination events that have been taking place in the phylogenomes since their originations over many millions of years. So we can see directly that the technical material of the people actually doing the research leads from one thing to another, constant new knowledge, whereas Shipton throws out this little sidebar from the creationist point of view in the Journal of Creation, and bloop, that's the end of that. He moves on to something else. If anybody knows, by the way, of any follow-up that's been done on that phylogenome thing from a creationist point of view in any of the other creationist venues, let me know. But I'm not aware of any. I couldn't find anything right off the bat. So we've got this whole issue that's been a recurring theme of all of these shows about the scholarly methods angle, how you can ascertain the reliability of a source by looking at how they're citing material, whether they're being accurate in the citation. And beyond that, there's kind of dead giveaways if you're talking about people who are deliberately misrepresenting the content of what they are citing, Trojan sources, as what Dapper Dino and that in his buddies refer to it, or telltale clues about just sloppy citation. And it happened that there was a cute little piece that popped up that is the part 2 of this, which is a beautiful illustration of sloppy scholarship. There's a piece by Leineweber, 2024, Creationist, the thing, from Answers Research Journal, that's reconstructing Microraptor as just a bird, rather than as a distinct lineage of feathered dino flyers. And I was aware of this thing from a different direction, but it happens to be that Dapper Dino noted in a show last November that he had spotted a peculiarity about his citation of a 2014 paper from Meadows on the evolution of bird wrists. And I won't be putting the link up to Dapper's video, but because I'm jumping directly to the technical literature, because this is the point that I'm making about it. So Dapper's comment was, Joel Leineweber quoted the first 2 sentences of this paper's abstract and then went on about how bird carpals can't evolve from dinosaur carpals. The whole point of the paper is showing that they are in fact made from the same bones, and there is in fact good evidence for the evolution of bird wrists from basal theropod wrists, unquote. Now, I was coming at the Leineweber paper from a somewhat different angle, and it relates to what data field that the Leineweber paper was relying on to buttress this whole misidentification of Microraptor as merely a bird. And what intrigued me about it was what examples he was dealing with in these little cladogram-ish kinds of things. And that Leineweber was constantly restricting his dinosaur comparisons to Allosaurus, which is really far removed from the Maniraptorans that would be your Tyrannosaurids and Maniraptorans and all of that field, to keep Microraptor from falling in the dino camp. If you make your measurement wide enough, then Microraptor can appear to be closer to birds than it will be to Allosaurus. And he's also missing more recent material. Remember, this is a 2024 paper by Leineweber. There's a paper from Cow et al. In 2021 that I'll be putting a link to, and then follow-up work in that same year from Sellers et al., which covers that angle. Now, there was another aspect that popped up while I was looking through the source citations of Leineweber, because I'm a source scholar geek. And it had to do with an indication that Leineweber wasn't necessarily closely looking at the structure of his own source base. And he's just linking material and not making connections as to who's who. And it happened to relate to Xing, Zhu, Xing, Xu. In other words, the name Xing and then a comma, the name Zhu, Chinese. And then the Zhu, Xing in a separate spot. So he's citing the same material from seemingly different authors, one supposedly last name Xing and another one supposedly last name Zhu. Terribly sorry, the same person. And so it looks like Leineweber doesn't really realize that there's an eccentricity that anybody that's a scholar has had to pay attention to. The fact that Chinese put, like the Latin, they put the names in the reverse order from the way we do in English, where we put the last name last, whereas a lot of cultures put the more generic family name up front, and then you go cascading downhill, which is why Julius Caesar, Julius is the family name, not Caesar. Caesar is the gift name. But everybody kind of thinks of it the other way around. So we think of it Caesar, Julius. And in fact, in indexes, you would tend to treat it that way. But in a way, no, that's wrong. And so in making that translation from a lot of Asian names where they reverse the nomenclature, pick one or the other, kid, but don't flip-flop with the same author, citing them in two different ways because you didn't stop to realize that Xing Zhu and Zhu Jing are the same person. And therefore, the papers should be in the same spot in terms of how you're dealing with them. So that's one of the things that reminds you about the giveaway, that sloppy scholarship, eccentricities of spelling, oddities in the way a paper is listed, to where if you're stealing the source secondarily from multiple sources, they may have slightly different ways of depicting the paper, in which case you don't realize, you don't organize it so that it's all uniform. You're just simply cherry picking. And that, I suspect, is some of the stuff that was going on in Leineweber's case. So that's some of the little lessons that we're seeing in the example of this Leineweber paper. And it would apply absolutely everywhere. When you're looking at politicians, like in Trumplandia, not offering sources for material, it'd be nice if reporters would get to the point where they would ask them for sources. And at that point, the moment we could drag a lot of these people onto our stage of methods, they're either going to have to own up and develop better methods, or I don't think they can do that. Their brains will explode and they will no longer be in politics. In this area, it was kind of interesting that some of the things that were making the rounds on social media had to relate to a lot of the town hall meetings that have been going around in the country, and how a lot of MAGA Republicans are getting boos and all sorts of pushback. And this is before the crash. I mean, this is in the comparatively good times that we're still in. But one of them happened to involve Baumgartner, our congressperson from my town of Spokane. And as it happens, although I didn't attend the Baumgartner thing, and I was frankly not surprised that there was a lot of booing and stuff that was going on in these things. I think it wasn't held in Spokane. I think it was held in an outlying area, so that's why I didn't bother going. But anyway, our local state representatives, all of whom I voted for, by the way, conducted a town hall in Spokane just this weekend, and I did attend because it was close at hand and I was able to get to it and had the information sent out, all that kind of stuff, which is more than can be said for Baumgartner. It was not a terrible town hall. In fact, it was a normal town hall. And this is what happens when you have people who are actually not stupid and have that are in touch with their constituents and are be able to explain things in straightforward ways. We're facing a lot of challenges in the state, budget deficits due to the fact that we've lost a lot of revenue because of the COVID pandemic. And so there's a big budget shortfall that the new governor is trying to do all sorts of things to deal with, some of which are very unpopular in certain circles. And they were being quizzed on it by their constituents. including people from labor unions and other things. And so it was an intriguing thing that despite the potential tension that could be the case on a lot of these issues, you were not getting the kinds of just intense anger that you're seeing in town halls with the MAGA people. Because of the fact that they're not there to have to worry about defending Elon Musk and the insanity parts of stuff. One of the issues that did come up, in fact, was how our state is going to have to be dealing with things to buffer zone our operation in case the Trumpista policies undermine a lot of the revenue sharing and other issues that relate to Medicaid and all that. And so it's going to be an interesting and air quotes exciting time, but we'll see how that goes. So let me remember to put in our thank you note for all of our people who have supported the project through our Patreon. I realize that everybody has to be mindful of their own economic conditions. And so everybody that has been able to stick with the project all this time, I thank you, especially since we've had a bit of a speed bump for the fact that the channel is popping up on a different channel. That everybody that was subscribed to the first iteration, because the email address got me shunted into an older feed that seemingly was defunct all of this time, and I haven't been able to find a way to get myself back to the others. And so I'm going to be sticking with this mode here because it works. And I've been letting everybody know on Twitter and Blue Sky as each episode pops up that if they aren't subscribed to this air quotes new address, as opposed, but it's simply the old one that was on a couple years ago, that has suddenly got revived again when I was just beginning the project. So anyway, those are the eccentricities of the world, and we have to make do with what we can. Also, I've been having fun. My co-author Jackson and boy, are we busy beavers working the cosmology stuff for Rocks 2. It's not my area of expertise, but I'm certainly learning a hell of a lot. And so, and I also have some access to a variety of people who have some expertise in the astrophysics and cosmology area, and there will be vetting to make sure that I'm not making any goof ups on things. But anyway, I'm a fast learner, and I'm keeping as going as it is. So there's going to be all sorts of really nice material. I was struck up an oddity about in researching stuff. Normally, Wikipedia is a nice little avenue of entry where if you look up a topic, you can find out an awful lot of technical literature. It works on most biological topics and that. But I was genuinely surprised at how kind of too restrictive a lot of the Wikipedia entries are on astronomical topics. So when I was looking into research on stellar nurseries, you would think that if you knew that there was a stellar nursery involving a particular object in the sky, that when you looked that thing up on Wikipedia, there would be the technical literature, the stellar nursery aspect, that new stars are appearing in this particular area. And it out most of the time, no, they had not incorporated that material, even though some of the material was years old. So I had to go kind of burrowing and running to find the papers that existed. There's actually technical literature on all of this stuff, but it wasn't showing in the little summary stuff. They were just basically dealing, here's the thing, and this is identified that this particular astrophysical thing is, and that's the end of it. So the kind of layered information that would be more the case when they're talking about paleontological topics, curiously enough, wasn't seemingly come up on a lot, not all, but a lot. The Orion Nebula, that's a different kettle of fish. That one's a super duper famous one. But it turns out there's an awful lot of stellar nurseries knocking around that we have direct material on, and it fits in very nicely. And very little of that gets discussed in the creationist literature, which is what we will be discussing in the course of the book. So there we go. And it's proving to be an extremely exciting area as I'm filling in the gap. I have a general understanding of a lot of physics and cosmological issues, but nailing everything down in a precise way so that you'll have a really good roadmap that will explain the little ins and outs, and you'll understand the terminology, and you'll have a clearer idea of how difficult it is to work out what the lithium content was stars in the early universe, and little details about how do you spot the sign of a newborn star inside of an infrared dark cloud. These are all the little sidebar stuff that pops up along the way, and that will be organizing everything. And so there's going to be a lot of cute little info boxes that will be covering all of that material, including a lot of then sidebars as we move into the Looney Tunes area of the weird cosmology of Robert Gentry's polonium halos, and the stuff on material like the Hovin theory and all of that stuff that then leads us off into some of the cute little weeds areas. We'll be discussing the supposed World War II aircraft that's mysteriously buried in the ice. Well, there actually is one in there, but that it supposedly disproves the ability to date things by ice core layers. And that one is still one that Kent Hovind keeps on bringing up. So these are the little sidebar. The other thing that was really intriguing that I've spotted is how few creationists are venturing into the cosmological area. There's relatively few of them that have expertise in it, for one thing. And so it's a area where they've kind of kept really tiptoey distant from it. So a small number of people, Jason Lyle and John Hartnett, and then a few others, you find little teeny snippets of Hebert, and Danny Faulkner ventures into it occasionally. But it's a surprisingly limited array of material. A certain amount of it is just repeating the tropes without really much technical literature. And so by putting everything up to speed to where the state of the technical science art is in 2025 compared to the little teeny snippets and slices that you're getting in the creationist literature, I think it will be a useful compendium chapter that will clarify an awful lot. And you'll learn a hell of a lot about a hell of a lot of cosmological issues all the way up to the present. And also some of the ones where people are having weird ideas that they've tended to downplay in their current apologetics. Russell Humphreys's galactocentrism being an example of the little tiny niche groups that don't think the sun runs on fusion. There's a bunch of little sidebars that pops up in there. And there is a legitimate group. Well, I can't say legitimate. There is a real group of non-creationist cosmologists who believe a lot of weird claptrap. And they often get siphoned into the creationist literature as well, usually in little niche things. You've got some stuff from, I can't remember whether it was Hartnett or Hebert, who was riffing off of some stuff, Hartnett, I think. And to the point where CMI had to put in disclaimers a few years later saying, yeah, no, they're actually not really referring to this. It's now an obsolete point and so forth. So there's a lot of interesting goalposts moving too. And so we'll be calling attention to all that stuff as well. So we are coming up on half an hour, so this will be a slightly truncated show. I'm still not seeing anybody in the chat, so I think the vast majority of our regular viewers are either not in the right time zone, or they don't know that I moved to this oddball channel. But I'm doing my best to let everybody know about it. And if everybody that does catch it, let everybody that you know that's part of the network, let them know that I'm still here. I haven't gone away. I'm still plowing along week by week by week, and we will continue to do so as the case may be. So let me put my little rocks advert up. Lickety-doo, lickety-doo. Come on, come on, come on. Slow to start. And our dear pal Peter vows to do a new advertisement for us once Vox with their Volume 2 comes out, which we'll see whether or not that's later on this year or whether we might be spilling over into 2026. It will be at the point that it's done. He's busy working on the next chapters as well. As I said, I'm knee-deep in the cosmological stuff. I'll have one big item to deal with after that. Will be the Arc Encounter list and its taxonomical material, which will be, I think, a useful adjunct to anybody in the creationism criticism field, because this will be the first place you'll be able to actually see all of those taxa organized in a way, because Answers in Genesis, Arc Encounter doesn't go out of their way to make it available. So it'll all be clear and concise, and we'll be able to be pointing out why it's in the weird order that it is, what source material we can infer from it, what information they're leaving out, etc., etc. So it should be a very, very useful little operation that's going on in there. Everybody stay super duper safe if you're in any circumstance of things that we've got grumblings and threats of illegality and that from crazy train Trump administration. So there are going to be people that will be bumping into that little mode. I don't know what's going to be happening in so many different areas. And of course, my anticipating that we're going to be in really deep doo-doo economically by the end of the year as the insane policies of mental degenerate Trump keep screwing everything up. And it's only going to get worse before it gets better, but with a little luck and a little bit of hard effort. Remember, there are way more non-Trumpistas than there are Trumpistas. And we've got a circumstance that we can use this as a springboard for getting more and more people on board to do some really important systemic changes in the way we handle everything from healthcare to affordable housing. And these have been, and income inequality and a lot of other festering issues that sometimes it takes a horrible depression to go, ching, ching, ching. Got your attention now? So that we can get some really important changes made. Because the last two times we had really big progressive changes in the United States was in the early 20th century after the 1890s depression. And then, of course, during the New Deal, during and after the Great Depression caused by the Hoover administration. Well, Harding. So anyway, we've got a half hour into it. Thank you very much. Anybody that catches this, make sure to like, subscribe, call attention to, comment, etc., etc. Spread the word to try to remind everybody that due to the foibles of restreams, suddenly we're on a different channel. And we will be seeing you kids all next week. Don't let the wooden penguins go after you.